A millionaire in a wheelchair, trapped in bitterness, watches a hungry girl begging for his leftovers. With unsettling innocence, she promises, "I'll teach you to walk again." He laughs at the absurd suggestion, certain that nothing could bring back what he has lost. But just 2 minutes later, her words change his life forever. Rain pelted against the tinted windows of the black Mercedes as Maximilian Brand watched the people on the streets of Munich. His driver steered the car through Maximilianstrasse, past the elegant boutiques and exclusive restaurants he used to frequent. Now they seemed to him nothing more than a meaningless backdrop to a world that no longer interested him. Maximilian, one of Germany's most dynamic entrepreneurs, had been confined to a custom-made wheelchair for 3 years. The helicopter crash in the Alps had not only taken his legs, but also his irrepressible will to live. At 45, he was a multiple billionaire, owner of a technology company with branches in 28 countries, and at the same time a man without hope. "Mr. Brand, we're here," Dietrich, his longtime chauffeur, interrupted his thoughts. "The Fraunhofer Institute is expecting you in 10 minutes. "Cancel it," Maximilian muttered. "I don't feel like going to this meeting. Drive me to Tantris." "I want to have lunch alone." The chauffeur just nodded. He had long since become accustomed to his employer's sudden changes of plan. Since the accident, Maximilian had been acting unpredictably, canceling important business appointments just to sit alone in expensive restaurants for hours, eating hardly anything. Tantris, one of Munich's most renowned restaurants, welcomed Maximilian with its usual deference. The restaurant manager personally escorted him to his regular table by the window. Discreetly shielded, yet with a view of the street, the usual bottle of chat-fit was brought over. "Yes," Maximilian replied tonelessly. He used to enjoy the wine, but now he only drank it out of habit. He mechanically ordered a complicated menu that he knew he would hardly touch. The wine arrived, he sipped it, the appetizer was served, he poked at it listlessly. By the time the main course arrived, he had already lost interest. "Bring me the check," he said to the waiter, "and pack that up. I'll take it with me." The waiter bowed slightly and disappeared. Maximilian looked out the window onto the street. The rain had eased. A faint sunlight broke through the clouds. He watched the people hurrying by, business people with expensive briefcases, tourists with shopping bags, Munich residents going about their daily business. Suddenly his gaze lingered on a small figure. A child, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, was standing at the back door of the restaurant, a girl wearing a worn red coat and a woolen hat that had slipped down almost over her eyes. She looked around furtively and then scurried over to the trash cans. Maximilian watched as the child lifted the lid of one of the coins with astonishing agility and looked inside. Her small hand reached in and pulled something out. It was the paper bag with his barely touched meal, which the waiter had just thrown away. The girl carefully opened the bag and inspected the contents. Then she sat down on a low wall, pulled a napkin out of her coat pocket, spread it on her lap, and began to eat with unexpected elegance. She used the plastic fork from the bag like fine cutlery, taking small, neat bites and chewing slowly. Something about this scene touched Maximilian in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. The dignity of the child in the midst of poverty, the careful way she treated the leftovers as if it were a feast in a Michelin-starred restaurant. "Your car is ready, Mr. Brand," announced the restaurant manager. Maximilian nodded absently. "Just a moment." He continued to watch the girl. She had almost finished her meal and was now carefully folding her napkin. At that moment, she lifted her head, and her gaze met Maximilian's behind the window pane. Instead of looking away in shame or running away, as he would have expected, the girl smiled. It was a radiant, open smile that caught him completely off guard. She even waved at him as if greeting an old friend. "I'd like to go," Maximilian said to the restaurant manager, suddenly uncomfortable at the thought that the child had caught him watching her. Outside, Dietrich helped him into the car, folded up the wheelchair, and stowed it in the trunk. Once Maximilian had made himself comfortable in the back seat, there was a knock on the window. The girl was standing right next to the car, gesturing for him to open the window. Irritated, Maximilian pressed the button and the window slid down. "Good afternoon, sir," said the child in clear, bright German. "You look sad. Is everything all right with you?" Maximilian stared at the girl. Her blue eyes looked at him directly and without any shyness. Blonde curls peeked out from under her crooked cap. I'm not sad, he replied more gruffly than he intended, and it's none of your business how I feel. Yes, it is, replied the girl with surprising determination. When rich people are sad, the whole world becomes grayer. I have to lend you my happiness. The words hit Maximilian like a blow. How do you know I'm rich? The child laughed. Your car is bigger than our room and you threw away food that was still good. She pointed to the paper bag in her hand. It was very tasty. Thank you. Maximilian didn't know what to say. The child's directness confused him. What's your name? He finally asked. I'm Lena Fisher. And you? Maximilian Brand. Maximilian is a very long name, Lena said thoughtfully. Can I call you Max? No, he replied automatically. No one called him Max. Not even his closest business partners dared to be that familiar. Why not? Short names are happier. Life isn't happy, Lena. Sometimes not, she admitted, but often it is, especially when you share it. Lena, a concerned female voice called from the street corner. A slender woman in a worn coat hurried toward her. What are you doing? I told you to stay close to me. Mom, I found a new friend, Lena called out cheerfully. His name is Maximilian, and he's very rich, but also very sad. The woman froze when she saw the black Mercedes and the distinguished man in the back seat. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Forgive me, sir, she said hastily, grabbing Lena's hand. My daughter is sometimes too direct. We don't want to bother you. She's not bothering me, Maximilian replied to his own surprise. We have to go anyway. Come on, Lena. Lena let her mother pull her away, but turned around once more. Mr. Maximilian, I have an idea. How about a trade? Give me your leftovers and I'll teach you how to walk. The woman froze and gasped sharply. Lena, you don't say things like that. Maximilian stared at the child. You want to teach me how to walk? He pointed to his legs. I'm in a wheelchair. I can't walk anymore. Lena shrugged. Walking properly means going where your dreams are, not where your feet take you. Maximilian laughed bitterly. What do you know about dreams, little girl? A lot, Lena insisted. I dream every night and during the day too, when class is boring. Her mother pulled her by the hand. Enough now, Lena. We have to go to the doctor, otherwise we'll be late. Are you sick? Maximilian asked suddenly, concerned. No, the woman replied hesitantly. It's just a routine checkup for school. Mama cleans offices at night, Lena explained cheerfully. Sometimes I have to wait a long time for her to finish. That's why I sometimes eat what other people leave behind. The woman closed her eyes for a moment, obviously ashamed of her daughter Lena's candor. Please, it's okay, Maximilian interrupted her. An idea formed in his head. Mrs. Fisher, Clara Fisher, Mrs. Fisher, may I invite you and your daughter to dinner? Tonight? Clara Fisher looked at him suspiciously. Why, baito? The question was direct, almost rude, but Maximilian respected her caution. Your daughter made me an interesting offer. I'd like to hear more about it. Clara hesitated, but Lena jumped up and down excitedly. Oh, please, Mom, I want to help Mr. Maximilian. After a long moment, Clara finally nodded. All right, but in a public restaurant, not at your home. Of course, Maximilian agreed. The cafer is at 7. I'll send my car to pick you up. That's not necessary, Clara declined. We'll take the subway as you wish. Maximilian handed her his business card. If you change your mind, give me a call. Clara hesitantly took the card and put it in her pocket. We really have to go now. Goodbye, Mr. Brand. Goodbye, Mr. Maximilian, Lena called out, waving cheerfully as her mother pulled her away. Don't forget to bring your dreams tonight. Maximilian watched the strange pair walk down the street, the small hand firmly in the larger one. For the first time in a long time, he felt something like curiosity. What did the child mean by going where her dreams are? Where to now, Mr. Brand? Dietrich asked, who had waited discreetly at the wheel throughout the conversation. Maximilian thought for a moment. Home, Dietrich. I have an appointment tonight. As the car started moving, Maximilian noticed that he was smiling for the first time in 3 years. The villa on Lake Starnberg lay bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. The imposing property, an architectural masterpiece from the Wilhelminian era, was reflected in the calm water. But for its owner, it had long since ceased to be a home and had become a magnificent prison. Maximilian let his assistant Robert push him through the spacious rooms, past valuable paintings and sculptures that he had once collected with passion. Now they meant nothing to him anymore. The Kafershenka has confirmed your table for tonight, Robert informed him as he consulted his tablet. The board meeting tomorrow morning has been postponed at your request, and Dr. Hartman called to confirm your therapy appointment. Tell him no, Maximilian muttered. Mr. Brand, the doctor emphasized how important it is to continue the treatment. The treatment is pointless, Robert. My legs won't come back, no matter how many exercises I do. Robert sighed quietly but made a note. What should I wear for tonight? Maximilian thought of Lena and her mother in their worn coats. Something discreet, no suit, the jeans and the gray cashmere sweater. Very well. Robert seemed surprised by the unusual choice but didn't comment on it. While Maximilian was getting changed, he kept thinking about his encounter with the little girl. Her words kept echoing in his head. To walk properly means to go where your dreams are, not where your feet take you. A strangely profound thought for a child. Shortly before 7 p.m., he was expected at Käferschenke, one of Munich's most traditional restaurants. The maitre d' led him to a discreetly located table at the back of the restaurant. Maximilian had deliberately not chosen one of his usual VIP tables so as not to intimidate his guests. He was 10 minutes early and used the time to collect himself. What did he actually expect from this evening? The spontaneous invitation was uncharacteristic of him, especially to people he hardly knew. Perhaps it was simple curiosity or a longing for distraction from the monotony of his existence. At 7 o'clock sharp, Clara and Lena Fisher appeared at the entrance to the restaurant. Clara was wearing a simple but neat dark blue pantsuit, probably her best outfit. Lena was wearing a red dress and her blonde curls were carefully combed. She was holding a small package wrapped in newspaper. The maitre d' led the two to his table. Clara seemed tense while Lena gazed wide-eyed at the elegant surroundings. Good evening, Mr. Brand, Clara greeted him formally and shook his hand. Thank you for the invitation. Hello, Mr. Maximilian, Lena beamed, holding out the package to him. This is for you. Surprised, Maximilian accepted the gift. That wasn't necessary. Yes, it was, Lena insisted. Mama says that when you're invited, you bring a gift. It's not expensive, but I made it myself. Maximilian carefully unwrapped the newspaper. A small figure folded from colorful paper appeared. A person with outstretched arms, as if flying. It's a dream runner, Lena explained seriously. It can go anywhere, even fly. When you're sad, it can run for you and find your dreams. Maximilian felt an unexpected lump in his throat. Thank you, Lena. That's very creative. You can take him anywhere, Lena continued. He fits in any pocket. Clara watched the interaction with a mixture of embarrassment and maternal pride. Lena worked on it all afternoon after we got back from the doctor. It's really beautiful, said Maximilian, carefully placing the figurine on the table in front of him. Shall we order? The waiter approached their table and handed them the menus. Clara glanced briefly at the prices and breathed a slight sigh of relief. Lena, on the other hand, studied the menu with great seriousness, even though she probably couldn't read very well yet. Order whatever you like, said Maximilian. You are my guests. Thank you, but we'll keep it modest, replied Clara. Oh, Yara, in a slightly tense voice. Mom, what is a Wiener Schnitzel? Asked Lena. It's a breaded veal cutlet, explained Maximilian. It's served with potatoes and cranberries. Very tasty. I'd like to try that, Lena announced. Clara hesitated but then nodded. She ordered a simple soup and a salad, while Maximilian opted for beef fillet. When the waiter had left, there was a brief, uncomfortable silence. Clara finally broke it. Mr. Brand, if you don't mind, I'd like to know why you invited us. Maximilian looked at the woman in front of him. She was perhaps in her early 30s with tired but intelligent eyes. Her posture betrayed pride and dignity, despite her obviously difficult circumstances. Your daughter made me an interesting offer today, he finally replied. She wanted to teach me how to run in exchange for leftovers. Clara closed her eyes briefly. I'm sorry, Lena is sometimes too direct. She didn't mean any harm. I know, Maximilian assured her. In fact, she said something that made me think. What was that? Lena asked curiously. You said that walking properly means going where my dreams are. What did you mean by that? Lena shrugged her shoulders as if the answer were obvious. Some people can walk with their legs, but they don't go anywhere. They stay in one place even though they're not happy there. Other people may not be able to walk with their legs, but they still achieve their dreams. Like Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking? Maximilian asked in surprise. Do you know him? We learned about him in school, Lena explained proudly. He couldn't walk or talk, but he explored the stars. Clara smiled gently. Lena is very interested in science and astronomy. We often borrow books from the city library. The waiter brought the appetizers and the conversation paused briefly. Maximilian watched Lena with the same careful elegance he had noticed when they first met. Ms. Fisher, he began after the waiter had left. May I ask what you do for a living? Clara hesitated for a moment. I clean office buildings. At night after the employees have gone home. During the day I study at the Distance Learning University. What are you studying? Business administration. I hope to find a better job one day. She held his gaze without shame or self-pity. And Lena's father? Maximilian asked before he could stop himself. Clara tensed. He hasn't been part of our lives since Lena was a baby. Mom says he wasn't ready to be a father, Lena added with a candor that only children have. But that's okay. We have each other. Clara gently stroked her daughter's head. That's right, sweetheart. We have each other. The main courses were served, and Lena's eyes widened at the sight of the Wiener Schnitzel that covered almost her entire plate. That's huge, she exclaimed enthusiastically. You don't have to eat it all, Clara reassured her. We can have the rest packed up for tomorrow. Lena nodded understandingly and cut off a small piece. After the first bite, she closed her eyes with pleasure. That tastes so good. Maximilian couldn't help but smile. The child's joy at something as simple as a good meal was contagious. How long had it been since he himself had felt such joy? Lena said that she sometimes has to wait alone while they work, he said, turning to Clara. Isn't that difficult? Clara lowered her gaze to her plate. It's not ideal, but we have no choice. Childcare is expensive, and the night shift pays better. Where does Lena wait while you work? It varies, sometimes at a neighbor's house, but she works evenings now, sometimes in the buildings where I clean. There are common rooms where she can sleep, and sometimes in the park when it's warm, Lena added, or in the subway station. Clara turned pale. Lena, you shouldn't be in the park or the subway, Maximilian interrupted her incredulously. That's dangerous for a child. Do you think I don't know that? Kara asked with suppressed anger. Do you think I would expose my daughter to such situations if I had a choice? I'm doing what I can. Lena reached for her mother's hand. It's okay, Mom. I take good care of myself. The child's words, which were meant to be reassuring, only made the situation more heartbreaking. A 5-year-old girl shouldn't have to take care of herself. I'm sorry, Maximilian said quietly. I didn't mean to blame you. I'm just concerned. Clara took a deep breath. I know, but we're getting by. We've been through worse times. Mama's very strong, Lena explained proudly and very wisely. She'll be an important businesswoman one day, and then we'll have a real home. A real home? Maximilian asked. Where do you live now? Clara hesitated again. We have a room in a shared apartment. It's temporary until I finish my studies. You could apply for scholarships, Maximilian suggested. There are many programs for single mothers. I've tried that, Clara replied with a bitter smile. But the competition is fierce, and without connections or an impressive resume, you have little chance. Maximilian was silent, lost in thought. He knew the reality. Talented people like Clara Fisher often fell through the cracks of the system, not because they lacked ability, but because they didn't have the right qualifications. And how do you like the university? He asked, changing the subject. Clara's face lit up. It's challenging, but I love it, especially the courses in business management and marketing. I'd like to start my own small business one day. What kind of business? A consulting firm for sustainable business management. I think many smaller companies would like to operate in a more environmentally friendly way, but don't know how. I could help them develop strategies that make both ecological and economic sense. Her eyes lit up as she spoke, and Maximilian recognized genuine passion and intelligence. This woman had potential. An interesting niche, he commented. The market for sustainability consulting is growing. You know about it? Claire asked, surprised. Maximilian smiled slightly. I'm an entrepreneur. I know a lot about many markets. What kind of company do you have? Lena asked curiously. A technology company. We develop software for various industries. Cool, Lena exclaimed enthusiastically. Can you build robots? Not directly, but our software sometimes controls robots in factories. Wow. Lena's eyes grew even wider. Can robots help you walk? The question was so unexpected that Maximilian was momentarily speechless. Clara gave her daughter a reproachful look. Lena, that's rude. No, it's okay, Maximilian assured her. Actually, there are exoskeletons, a kind of robotic legs that can help people like me, but my injury is complicated. He hesitated, then added, besides, I've stopped looking for solutions. Why? Lena asked with the blunt directness of a child. Because Maximilian faltered. Why, actually? Because he had lost hope. Because he had settled into his pain and bitterness. I don't know, he finally admitted. You should never stop searching, Lena said seriously. Mom says giving up is the only thing you can really lose. Clara blushed slightly. I like to quote old wisdom to motivate Lena. It's good wisdom, Maximilian replied thoughtfully. The conversation flowed more easily as they enjoyed the rest of their meal. Lena talked about her school and her friends, Clara about her studies and her dreams for the future. Maximilian mostly listened, occasionally asking questions and enjoying the company of this unusual little family. When dessert was served, a chocolate mousse for Lena that made her eyes light up, Maximilian made a decision. Mrs. Fisher, he began hesitantly, I have a suggestion. My company is regularly looking for interns in the field of sustainability management. It's a paid position with flexible working hours that would be compatible with your studies. Would you be interested? Clara froze with her spoon halfway to her mouth. Excuse me? An internship at my company. You could work during the day while Lena is at school and gain practical experience in exactly the field that interests you. Is that an offer out of pity? Clara asked suspiciously. No, Maximilian replied truthfully. It's a selfish offer. I recognize talent when I see it, and I want to recruit it for my company before someone else does. Clara looked at him searchingly. Why should I trust you? You hardly know me. I trust my instincts. And besides, he glanced at Lena, who was looking back and forth between the adults with wide eyes. Your daughter promised to teach me how to walk. I'm curious to see how she'll do that. A week had passed since the unusual dinner at Käferschenke. Clara Fisher had accepted Maximilian's offer after 2 days of consideration, but on one condition. She didn't want special treatment. She wanted to go through the regular application process. Maximilian had agreed and was secretly impressed by her pride. Clara had passed her interview with the HR department with flying colors, and today was her first day at work at Brand Technology's Munich headquarters. Maximilian sat in his office on the top floor of the glass office tower and stared at the city skyline. Normally, he rented the company, worked from home, and delegated most decisions to his board of directors. Today, however, he had arrived early, driven by a curiosity he hardly wanted to admit to himself. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. His assistant, Ms. Weber, entered. Miss Fisher is here, Mr. Brand. Shall I ask her in? Yes, please. Clara entered the office dressed in a simple but elegant pantsuit. Her hair was tied back in a neat bun, and she looked professional, if slightly nervous. Good morning, Mr. Brand, she greeted him formally. Ms. Fisher, Maximilian pointed to the chair in front of his desk. Please take a seat. What was your first impression of our company? Clara sat down with good posture. Impressive. The facilities are state-of-the-art and everyone has been very helpful. Mr. Mueller has already shown me some sustainability projects that I will be working on. Good. Maximilian looked at her thoughtfully. And how is Lena? Did the childcare work out? A smile appeared on Clara's face. Yes, perfectly. The company daycare is wonderful. Lena was so excited that she could hardly sleep. I'm glad to hear that. There was a brief silence. Clara hesitated, then asked, Was that all you wanted to see me about, Mr. Brand? Maximilian cleared his throat. The truth was that he himself didn't know exactly why he had called her in. I wanted to make sure that everything was to your satisfaction, and I had an idea I wanted to discuss with you. An idea? Yes. Maximilian rolled his chair to the window and pointed to an old building at the end of the street. Do you see that building over there? The Mangala Palace. Clara stepped to the window and followed his gaze. The magnificent 19th century city palace stood out clearly from the modern glass buildings surrounding it. It's beautiful, she said admiringly. It's been for sale for over a year. No one wants to buy it because the renovation would be too expensive, and demolition is not possible due to its listed status. What are you planning to do with it? Clara asked curiously. Maximilian turned to her. I'm thinking of buying it as an investment, as a project. He hesitated, unsure how to phrase his still half-baked idea. Lena got me thinking. Lena? Kay raised her eyebrows in surprise. Yes, her daughter said she would teach me to walk, not physically, but toward my dreams. He laughed briefly, embarrassed by his own words. It sounds silly, but it triggered something in me. It doesn't sound silly, Clara replied gently. Lena sometimes has that effect on people. She sees things differently. Exactly, Maximilian continued. I've accumulated a lot of money over the last few years, but I've achieved little with it. The company runs without me. I've become expendable. I don't believe that any person is ever expendable, Clara said quietly. Maximilian looked at her, surprised by the simple wisdom in her words. Maybe you're right. In any case, I'm thinking about buying and renovating the palace and then setting up a foundation. What kind of foundation? One that helps people like you, single parents who are trying to get an education and create a better future for their children. The foundation could offer affordable housing, childcare, and educational scholarships. Clara looked at him in amazement. That would be incredibly generous. Not generosity, Maximilian objected. Investment in people with potential. In the future. He paused. What do you think about it? I think it's a wonderful idea, Clara replied sincerely. But why are you telling me this? Because I need your help. Maximilian looked her straight in the eye. I don't know the world of charity. I know how to make money, not how to donate it wisely. You, on the other hand, know firsthand what people in difficult situations really need. You want me to help with this project. I want more than that. I want you to run it with me. Maximilian spoke the words that had formed in his head while he waited for her arrival. As co-director with equal decision-making rights, Clara stared at him in disbelief. You can't be serious. I've just been hired as an intern, and you'll complete this internship, Maximilian assured her. The foundation would be a separate project, one that needs her unique perspective, but I have no experience running a foundation. Neither do I. We would learn together. Maximilian smiled slightly. Besides, she raised her daughter while studying and working at the same time. That shows more organizational talent than most of my managers possess. Clara shook her head in disbelief. Why me? They could hire anyone. Professional foundation managers, experienced social workers. I can hire them later. Maximilian agreed. But for the vision at the heart of the foundation, I need someone who not only understands what it's about in theory, but someone with integrity, intelligence, and personal experience. Clara was silent for a long time, her gaze fixed on the old palace. Can I think about it? She finally asked. Of course, take all the time you need. Maximilian hesitated, then added, and please discuss it with Lena. I'd like to hear her opinion. Clara laughed softly. You take the opinion of a 5-year-old seriously? That 5-year-old has shown more wisdom than most adults I know, Maximilian replied seriously, including myself. You're not wrong there. Clara stood up. I should get back to my department. Mr. Mulder is probably waiting. Of course. Maximilian nodded. We'll talk later. When Kara had left, he turned back to the window and looked at the old palace. For the first time since the accident, he felt something like anticipation, like meaning. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the little paper figure Lena had given him, the Dream Runner. Thoughtfully, he turned it between his fingers. Maybe he could still learn to walk in a way he never thought possible. 3 days later, Maximilian sat in his wheelchair in front of the Mangalar Palace. The real estate agent next to him explained the current condition of the building, but Maximilian was hardly listening. He was already imagining what the old walls would look like after renovation, the classic facade restored to its former glory. Inside, modern functional rooms for families in need, for educational events, for new beginnings would, of course, require considerable investment, the agent concluded. The electrical system is outdated, the plumbing needs to be completely replaced, and the roof has several leaks. I am aware of that, Maximilian replied calmly. I would still like to buy it. As you wish, Mr. Brand. I'll prepare the paperwork. As the real estate agent left to make a phone call, Maximilian sensed a presence beside him. Clara was standing there, having come over from work during her lunch break, as they had agreed. It's more impressive than I thought, she said, looking at the facade with its tall windows and ornate entrance portal. Wait until you see the inside. Maximilian smiled. It's run down, but the basic structure is solid. High ceilings, spacious rooms, a beautiful courtyard. It has potential, just like our project, Clara remarked. She took a deep breath. I've thought about your suggestion and talked to Lena, and she was thrilled. She said, Mom, this is your chance to fly. Clara laughed softly. Sometimes I wonder where she gets her wisdom. Children see the world more clearly than we do, Maximilian said, without all the prejudices and fears we accumulate over the course of our lives. Yes, Clara turned to him. I would like to participate, Mr. Brand, but I have conditions, which would be, first, I want to finish my internship at your company. I want to earn my place there regardless of this project. Agreed. Second, the foundation must really help, not just look good. No PRG, no superficial solutions. Real, sustainable help for people who need it. That is exactly my intention, Maximilian assured her. And third, if we do this, we do it as true partners. You have the money, I have the experience. Both are equally important. Maximilian nodded slowly. I completely agree, Ms. Fisher. Clara, she corrected with a small smile. If we are to be partners, we should call each other by our first names. Clara, he repeated. And I'm Maximilian, or Max, as Lena suggested. Max, she tried out the name. It suits you. Shorter, less formal. I've never had a nickname, he confessed. Not even as a child. Now you have one. Clara looked back at the palace. What will your board say about this? About this project? Maximilian shrugged. It's my money, my decision. There will be talk about us. No doubt. Does that bother you? Clara thought for a moment. No, I know what's true and what's not. That's enough for me. The broker returned, a satisfied expression on his face. Good news, Mr. Brand. The owner is willing to accept your offer. We can finalize the contract within a week. Excellent. Maximilian looked at Kara. It seems we'll have a lot of work to do soon. That's right. She held out her hand to him. Here's to a good working relationship. Max. He took her hand and felt a warmth that went beyond mere physical contact. Here's to a good working relationship, Clara. Mom, why do we have to dress up so nicely? Lena asked as Clara braided her unruly curls into a neat ponytail. Because we're meeting important people today, Clara explained patiently. Bankers, lawyers, architects, everyone who will help us renovate the palace and establish the foundation. Will Mr. Max be there too? Yes, of course. It's his project. Our project, Lena corrected seriously. He said we're all important to it. Clara smiled and kissed her daughter on the head. You're right, it's our joint project. It had been 2 weeks since Maximilian, or Max, as she now called him, had bought the palace. Things had developed at an astonishing speed. Today was the first official meeting of the founding committee of the New Paths Foundation, as they had provisionally named it. Done, Clara announced, turning Lena toward the small mirror in her room. You look beautiful. Lena looked critically at her reflection. She was wearing a blue dress with a white collar and her best shoes. I look like a princess, she said with satisfaction. And you're acting like one. Yes, that means being polite and listening when adults are talking. But Mr. Max said I can share my ideas, Lena protested. He says I'm the little advisor. Clara sighed and smiled. Yes, he did say that. But wait until you're asked. All right, all right. Lena took her little handbag in which she had packed her beloved notebook and colored pencils. I'm ready. They left the small apartment they had been living in for a week. It was a company apartment owned by Brand Technologies, normally reserved for visiting scientists. Max had insisted that they move in there until the renovation of the palace was complete. Clara had only agreed on the condition that she pay a reasonable rent. The meeting took place in the Brand Technologies conference room. When Kara and Lena entered, several people were already present. An architect with construction plans spread out, two lawyers in formal suits, a representative from the bank, and of course Max, who was sitting in his wheelchair at the head of the table. His face lit up when he saw them. Kara, Lena, come in. We were just discussing the floor plans. Lena immediately ran to him and gave him a warm hug. Hello, Mr. Max. I brought some ideas for the garden. Max laughed, a sound that would have been unthinkable a few weeks ago. Of course you did. We'll discuss them later. Clara greeted those present with a polite smile and took the seat next to Max, which he had kept free for her. Lena sat down on a chair in the corner and immediately began drawing in her notebook. We were just discussing the cost estimate for the renovation, Max explained. It will be more expensive than expected, but still feasible. The architect, Mr. Wagner, pointed to the plans. The main problem is the heating and air conditioning. The building is old. It's home, and we have to replace everything if we want to make it energy efficient. Can we install solar panels on the roof? Claire asked. That would save costs in the long run and be more environmentally friendly. An excellent idea, agreed Mr. Wagner. However, we have to negotiate with the historic preservation authorities. The roof is part of the historic ensemble. I'm sure we'll find a solution, said Max confidently, perhaps in the courtyard or on an outbuilding. The discussion continued, detailed and technical. Clara participated actively, asking intelligent questions and making practical suggestions. Max watched her with growing admiration. She had a natural talent for organization and planning, coupled with a deep understanding of the needs of the people the foundation was meant to help. After an hour of intense discussion about building regulations and budget issues, Lena spoke up from her seat in the corner. May I say something? She asked politely, as her mother had instructed her to do. The adults looked at her in surprise. Max smiled encouragingly. Of course, Lena, what would you like to say? Lena came to the table and held up her notepad. You talk about money and rules all the time, but you haven't talked about how the people who live there will feel. There was a brief silence. Then the architect asked kindly, And how do you think they should feel, young lady? At home, Lena replied without hesitation, not like they're in a hotel or an office. There should be places where children can play, even when it rains, and corners where moms can rest when they're tired, and maybe a library with lots of books. She pointed to her drawing, a childlike but surprisingly detailed vision of the courtyard with play, areas, benches, and even a small pond. The adults looked at the drawing in silence. Then Max cleared his throat. Lena had made an important point. We're not just talking about a building here, but a home, albeit a temporary one, for people in difficult life situations. It should not only be functional, but also warm and inviting. The architect nodded slowly. We could actually redesign the courtyard into a protected play area with a roof for rainy days and renovate the former library in the east wing and perhaps set up a common room, Clara suggested, a place where families can get together, cook, and eat. This promotes interaction and prevents isolation. An excellent idea, Max agreed. Make a note of that, Mr. Wagner. The architect eagerly took notes and the discussion took a new direction. Now it was no longer just about costs and schedules, but about the people who would live in the building, their needs and their well-being. When the meeting ended 2 hours later, they had a concrete plan for the renovation of the palace and a clear vision for the foundation. The lawyers would draft the statutes, the architect would revise the plans, and the bank had practically agreed to the financing. Thank you for your contribution, Lena, said Max when only she, Clara, and Lena were left in the room. You reminded us what this is really about. Lena beamed with pride. Can I hang my drawing on the wall when the house is finished? Of course you can. Max smiled. In fact, I think we should frame your drawing and hang it in the entrance hall as a reminder of the original vision. Really, Lena's eyes widened. Really, without you, this project would never have started. Max looked at Clara. Without both of you. Clara blushed slightly. We just helped you find your own dreams. More than a little, Max disagreed. You taught me to dream again. That's a gift I can never repay. You don't have to repay it, Lena said seriously. Gifts are for keeping and for passing on when you can. Max laughed softly. You're right again, little philosopher. Lena frowned. What's a philosopher? Someone who has deep thoughts about life, Clara explained. Oh, Lena thought for a moment. Then I guess I am one. The two adults laughed, and for a brief, perfect moment, they felt like a family, an unusual, unexpected family, brought together by chance and fate. Shall we go for ice cream? Max suggested spontaneously. I know a place nearby that serves the best ice cream sundaes in Munich. Yes, Lena exclaimed enthusiastically, with chocolate sauce and sprinkles. With everything you want, Max promised. Clara watched the interaction with a warm feeling in her chest. In the few weeks she had known Max, he had transformed from a bitter, isolated man into someone who could laugh and feel joy again. And that change had begun with a simple offer. Give me your leftovers, and I'll teach you how to run. Perhaps, Kara thought as they left the conference room, Lena had already fulfilled her promise. The autumn sun cast warm light through the tall windows of the renovated Palais Mona. 3 months had passed since the first planning meeting, and the old building had undergone an amazing transformation. What was once dilapidated and abandoned now shone with new splendor, a perfect blend of historic grandeur and modern functionality. Max sat in his wheelchair in the large hall, which had been converted into a common room, and looked with satisfaction at the result of their work. The original stucco ceilings and wood paneling had been carefully restored, while the floor was covered with practical but elegant parquet. In one corner, sofas and armchairs were grouped around a low table. In another, there were dining tables and chairs. A modern kitchen had been installed on one side with several cooking stations so that several families could cook at the same time. It's turned out beautifully, said Clara, who had stepped up beside him. She was wearing jeans and a simple shirt, her hair tied back in a practical ponytail. In recent weeks, she had often helped out on the construction site, coordinating tradespeople and making decisions. It is, Max agreed. I can't believe it's the same building. The opening is in a week, Claire reminded him. Are you nervous? A little, Max admitted. There would be a lot of attention. The press, politicians, business people, and soon after that, the first families. Clara smiled. That's the part I'm most looking forward to. Over the past few months, their relationship had changed. The initial caution and formality had grown into a deep friendship and mutual respect. They worked together every day, shared successes and setbacks, then got to know each other better and better. Max had also developed a close bond with Lena. The little girl often visited him in his office, bringing him drawings or telling him about school. Sometimes he took her on weekend trips to the zoo, the Deutsches Museum, or just to the park. Clara sometimes accompanied them. Sometimes she left the two of them alone, knowing that they both needed this special friendship. Where is our little consultant, by the way? Max asked. In the library, Clara replied. She's sorting the children's books by color because she thinks it looks nicer than alphabetically. Max laughed. An unconventional but perfectly acceptable method. The decoration committee is coming in an hour, Clara reminded him. We should check the furniture delivery for the East Wing before they get here. Of course! Max turned his wheelchair toward the door. I'm still not sure whether the blue or green curtains are better for the family apartments. The green ones, Clara said firmly. They're warmer and more inviting. Blue can seem cold. You're probably right, Max admitted. You have a better sense for these things than I do. They left the common room and took the newly installed elevator to the first floor, where the family apartments were being furnished. Each apartment consisted of a bedroom, a small living area, and a private bathroom. Modest but comfortable and dignified. I spoke with the job placement team today, Clara said as they walked down the corridor. They've already made contact with 20 companies that are willing to offer our residents internships or permanent positions. Excellent, Max said appreciatively. And childcare? 3 teachers have been hired, all with experience working with children from difficult backgrounds. The playroom on the ground floor is almost finished. They reached the first apartment and entered it. The furniture was simple but of good quality. A bed, a desk, a small dining table with chairs, a sofa. Everything was in warm, neutral colors, with the possibility for residents to add their own personal touches. What do you think, Clara? Is anything missing? Max asked as he inspected the apartment. Clara thought for a moment. Maybe a few plants. They would bring life to the room. A good idea, Max agreed. We could give each new resident a small potted plant as a welcome gift. They worked their way through the remaining apartments, taking notes and discussing minor changes. Max admired Clara's eye for detail and her practical approach. She thought of things that would never have occurred to him, such as the need for nightlights for families with small children or additional hooks at child height in the bathrooms. With small children or extra hooks at child height in the bathrooms. When they had finished the tour, they went to the library to check on Lena. The room was one of the most beautiful in the entire palace, with tall, dark wood bookcases and cozy reading corners. Lena was standing on a small ladder, concentrating on sorting books onto a shelf. "How's it going, sweetie?" Clara asked. Lena turned around and beamed. "Almost done. Look how beautiful the colors look." Max rolled closer and looked at the shelves. Indeed, the arrangement of the books by color looked amazingly appealing. A rainbow of book titles ranging from red to orange and yellow to blue, indigo, and violet. "That's really pretty," he praised. "An artistic decision." "I also put all the picture books at the bottom so the little kids can reach them," Lena explained proudly. "And the thick, boring books at the top." Clara laughed. "You really thought of everything." A knock at the door interrupted them. Robert, Max's personal assistant, entered. "Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Brand, but Mr. Mueller from the board is here. He says it's urgent." Max frowned. "I'll be right there. Kara, can you receive the decoration committee when they arrive?" "Of course," she assured him. Max left the library and found Thomas Mueller, the chairman of the board of Branded Technologies, waiting in the lobby. Mueller was a tall, stern man in his 50s who had known Max for many years. "Thomas, what brings you here?" Max asked, trying to hide his irritation. He had informed the board about the foundation project, but it was a personal endeavor, not a company project. Maximilian Mueller nodded curtly. "We need to talk privately. My office isn't fully set up yet," Max replied, "but we can go to the small conference room." He led Mueller to a room at the end of the corridor that was intended for smaller meetings. As soon as the door was closed, Mueller got straight to the point. "The board is concerned, Maximilian. This project is taking up too much of your time. The company is suffering as a result." Max raised his eyebrows. "The quarterly figures say otherwise. We have the best results in 5 years." "Not thanks to your leadership," Mueller countered. "You have hardly attended any board meetings. You delegate important decisions, and you spend your time here on this charity project." "This charity, as you call it, is important," Max replied calmly, "and it does not interfere with my role as CEO. I am always available and make all the necessary decisions." "It's not just that," Mueller lowered his voice. "There is talk, Maximilian, about you and that woman." Max froze. "What woman?" "Ms. Fisher, your co-director." Mueller made a dismissive gesture with his hand. "A single mother with no notable qualifications who suddenly gets a senior position in your new foundation and has access to millions of euros. People are asking questions." Max felt anger rising within him. "Clara Fisher is one of the most competent people I've ever met. She's studying business administration with excellent grades, has more practical life experience than most of our managers, and works harder than anyone else on this project. If anyone is asking questions, it's only out of envy or malice." Mueller sighed. "I'm just telling it like it is, Maximilian. The business world is a shark tank. You know that. Your reputation is a valuable asset to the company. If it gets damaged, my reputation is determined by good work, not gossip." Max interrupted him sharply. "Now excuse me, I have a meeting." He turned his wheelchair toward the door, but Mueller stopped him. "One more thing, Maximilian, the sustainability of this foundation. Do you have a long-term financing plan, or will you have to keep using your personal assets?" The question was justified, and Max knew it. "We are working on a foundation model that will be partially self-financing through partnerships with companies, donations, and small social enterprises that we will establish." "Sounds ambitious," Mueller commented skeptically. "It is." Max opened the door. "But if you're not ambitious, you won't achieve anything great. I learned that in the business world, and it applies here too." He left Mueller standing there and rolled back to the library, where Kara and Lena were now talking to the members of the decoration committee. Clara gave him a questioning look when he entered, but he shook his head slightly later. They spent the next few hours discussing color schemes, decorations, and the final details for the opening ceremony. It wasn't until late afternoon, when Lena was in the playroom with one of the teachers, that Kara found the opportunity to speak to Max in private. What did Mr. Mueller want? She asked directly. Max hesitated. Nothing important. The board's concerns about my time management. Clara saw through his evasive tactics immediately. Max, if we're partners, you have to be honest with me. What did he really say? Max sighed and rolled his wheelchair over to the window. He expressed concerns about your role in the foundation. Ah, Clara nodded slowly. He thinks I'm using you, or worse. It's ridiculous, Max said vehemently. He doesn't know you. No one who knows you would think such a thing. But many don't know me, Clara replied calmly. They only see what they want to see. A rich man in a vulnerable position and a young single mother without money. It's a classic prejudice. It shouldn't make me angry, but it does, Max confessed. How dare they question your integrity? Clara smiled gently because it's easier than admitting that someone like me might have something to offer that money can't buy. And what is that? Max asked quietly. Perspective, experience, compassion without pity. She stepped next to him at the window. Max, you have to understand, I'm used to reactions like that. As a single mother, I'm constantly judged and underestimated. It doesn't affect me anymore. It affects me, Max said. But you're right, we should focus on our work, not on the opinions of others. Clara nodded in agreement. Exactly. And speaking of work, I spoke to social services. They've selected the first 7 families who will move in here. Single mothers with children who want to continue their education or get training. When can you move in? Next week, right after the opening ceremony, Kara replied. I have their paperwork in my office. Do you want to see it? Of course, they went to Ka's office, a bright room overlooking the courtyard. As promised, Lena's drawing hung on the wall in a beautiful frame. The child's vision of the project, which had become reality to an astonishing degree. Clara took a folder out of her desk drawer and placed it on the table in front of Max. Here are the family profiles. All of them have been carefully selected based on their motivation, potential, and needs. Max leafed through the documents. A former nurse who had become homeless after a divorce and now wanted to start studying health management. A young mother who had to drop out of her training as a nursery school teacher when she became pregnant. A migrant with 2 children who had a degree in computer science, but whose qualifications were not recognized in Germany. They all have so much potential, Max said thoughtfully. They just need a chance. Just like I got, Clara agreed. Sometimes that's all it takes, a chance and someone who believes in you. Max looked up at her. Have you ever thought that our meeting was fate? Clara smiled. I don't know if I believe in fate, but I believe in happy coincidences and what we make of them. So it was a happy coincidence that Lena was looking for food behind the restaurant on that particular day. Maybe Kara sat on the edge of her desk, or maybe it was inevitable that 2 people who needed each other would find each other eventually. Needed, Max repeated quietly. Yes, Clara simply said. You needed someone to help you find meaning again. And I needed someone to give me the chance to reach my full potential. Max thought of the bitter, isolated man he had been 4 months ago. The change was profound, and it was largely thanks to Kara and Lena. You're right, he admitted. I needed you more than I ever thought possible. A voice from the door interrupted them. And we needed you, Lena called out, having entered unnoticed. Not because of your money, but because you're so smart and tell funny stories and help us dream big dreams. Clara and Max both laughed at Lena's perfect timing and blunt honesty. Come on, Lena urged. Mrs. Weber says dinner is ready, and I'm hungry. Welcome, Clara promised, standing up. She took one last look at Max. Don't let Mueller worry you. What we're doing here is right and important. Max nodded. It is, and we'll prove it to everyone. He followed Clara and Lena into the common room, where Robert had prepared a simple dinner for the team. As they ate and talked, Mueller's warning fell away from Max like a jacket that had become too tight. Here, surrounded by people who believed in the same goal, he felt more at home than he ever had in his luxurious villa. And when Lena told him how she had organized the library, her eyes shining and her gestures expansive, Max knew with absolute certainty that he had chosen the right path. Not despite his accident, but perhaps even because of it. Sometimes he thought you had to fall first to really learn to walk. Spring had transformed Munich into a sea of blossoms. In the courtyard of the Palais Mangela, the newly planted fruit trees were in bloom, and the children of the foundation played under the falling petals that trickled from the sky like snow. 6 months had passed since the opening, and the Neueweg Foundation had established itself. The original 7 families had grown to 15. Single parents with their children found not only a roof over their heads here, but also education, support, and a community. Max sat at his desk and looked at the statistics on his screen. Of the first 7 mothers, 4 had already found permanent employment. 2 had resumed their studies, and 1 had started a small catering business with the foundation's support. All the children attended school or kindergarten regularly, and the weekly tutoring sessions and creative workshops were well attended. A knock at the door made him look up. Clara entered, followed by a young woman whom Max recognized as Sophia, one of the first residents of the palace. "Sorry to interrupt, Max," Clara said, "but Sophia wanted to tell you something in person." Sophia, a slim woman in her late 20s with short dark hair, shifted nervously from one foot to the other. "Mr. Brand, I wanted to tell you that I got the job at the software company I interviewed with last month." Max's face lit up. "Sophia, that's fantastic. Congratulations. It's a full-time position with health insurance and everything," Sophia continued, her voice trembling with excitement. "And best of all, they offer flexible working hours and the option to work from home part of the time so I can take care of Marco." "I couldn't be prouder," Max said sincerely. "You worked hard for this." "It wouldn't have been possible without the foundation," Sophia replied. "The programming courses, the job application training, the childcare. You and Ms. Fisher changed my life." "You changed your life yourself," Clara corrected gently. "We just provided the tools." Sophia shook her head. "It was more than that. It was dignity. Here I never felt like a charity case, more like someone who deserved a chance." Max felt a lump forming in his throat. That had been the philosophy on which they had built the foundation. Not charity, but opportunity. Not dependence, but empowerment. "When do you start?" he asked, trying to hide his emotion. "In 2 weeks," Sophia replied. "And that means I'll be moving out soon. I've already found a small apartment not far from here." "That's the natural next step," Clara said with a smile. "But you know you're always welcome. The library, the tutoring for Marco, all of that will still be available to you." "Thank you." Sophia took a deep breath. "I wanted to ask something else. Once I've moved out, can I come back as a volunteer to help others, just as I was helped?" Max and Clara exchanged surprised glances. It was the first time a resident had expressed this wish. "Of course," Max said immediately. "Your experience would be invaluable to others in similar situations." "Perfect," Sophia beamed. "I could teach programming courses for beginners or help with job application training." "An excellent idea," Clara agreed. "We should develop a formal alumni program. People like you, Sophia, are the best ambassadors for what we do here." After more congratulations and a warm hug, Sophia said goodbye to go tell her son the good news. Clara sat down in the chair opposite Max. "This is a milestone," she said quietly. "Our first graduate who will truly stand on his own 2 feet. The first of many," Max replied. He smiled. "Do you know what that means?" "Our concept works." "It works," Clara confirmed, "even though we still have some challenges." ZP Clara counted on her fingers. "The waiting list is getting longer. We need more space or we have to expand. Funding for next year is not yet fully secured, and we need to reach more single fathers. So far, we only have 2 fathers in the program." "All solvable problems," Max said confidently. "As for expansion, I have an idea." He opened a file on his computer and turned the screen toward Kara. "The property next to the palace, the former coach house, is for sale. It's smaller, but with some renovations, we could create 5 or 6 additional residential units there, specifically for single fathers." Clara looked at the plan with shining eyes. "That would be perfect and would allow us to better cater to different needs." "As for financing," Maxford continued, "I've spoken to some business partners. 3 have already agreed to support our partnership program, and the city of Munich is interested in covering part of the operating costs after seeing how effective our approach is." Clara nodded appreciatively. "You've accomplished a lot in the last few weeks." "We both have," Max corrected her. "Your presentation to the city council last week was convincing. Councilwoman Becker told me personally how impressed she was." Clara blushed slightly. Public speaking had never been her strong suit, But for the foundation, she had left her comfort zone and learned to be persuasive. Speaking of appointment, she said, glancing at her watch, Lena will be back from school in half an hour. She's really looking forward to your outing. Max tapped his forehead lightly. The outing, I almost forgot. How could you forget a visit to the zoo with Lena? Kara teased. She's been talking about nothing else for days. The new elephant enclosure, Max remembered. She really wanted to see the baby elephants. Exactly. And I'm sure she has a long list of facts she wants to share with you. Max laughed. Over the past few months, Lena had developed a passion for animals, especially endangered species. She devoured books about wildlife and could talk for hours about elephants, tigers, or whales. I should get ready, he said, closing his laptop. Do you still have that meeting with the education committee this afternoon? Yes, at 3 o'clock, Clara confirmed. We're discussing the possibility of expanding our tutoring program to neighboring schools. A good initiative, Max praised. The more children we can reach, the better. They left the office together and walked to the main entrance of the palace, where they waited for Lena's school bus. The spring sun warmed their faces and a gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers. It's hard to believe that it all started less than a year ago, Kara remarked thoughtfully, with a chance encounter behind a restaurant. Nothing about it was chance, Max replied with a gentle smile. At least not from Lena's perspective. She saw a sad man and decided to help him. She has a special talent for seeing the best in people, Clara agreed. Soar in me. What do you mean by that? Clara hesitated for a moment. Before I met you, I was exhausted, discouraged. I worked so hard but never really got anywhere. Lena was the only bright spot in my life. She looked at Max. Then came this crazy encounter, and suddenly opportunities opened up that I hadn't even dared to dream of. You could have done it without me, Max said with conviction. It just would have taken longer, maybe. But you gave me more than just material support, Max. You gave me confidence in my abilities, in my ideas. That's priceless. Max was about to reply when the yellow school bus stopped at the gate. The doors opened and Lena jumped out, her backpack bouncing on her back. She ran towards them, her face beaming with a smile. Mom, Max, guess what? We learned about endangered species today and I knew all the answers. The teacher said I could become a biologist when I grow up. That's wonderful, sweetie, said Clara, hugging her daughter. Are you ready for our visit to the zoo? Asked Max. Yes, I even made a list of questions for the zookeeper. Lena pulled a folded piece of paper out of her bag and waved it excitedly. Then we'd better get going, suggested Max. The elephants are waiting for us. Don't you want to eat something first? Asked Clara. Lena shook her head vigorously. No time for food. The baby elephants are more important. Max laughed. Don't worry. We'll eat something at the zoo. I promise to bring you back before it gets dark. Clara leaned forward and kissed Lena on the forehead. Have fun, you two. And Max, thank you. For what? He asked, surprised. For taking time for her. It means a lot to her and to me, too. A warm feeling spread through Max's chest. It means just as much to me, he said quietly. Lena tugged impatiently at his sleeve. Come on, Max. The elephants are waiting. I'm coming. He laughed and followed the excited girl to the car, where Dietrich was already waiting to drive them to the zoo. The Munich Zoo, Hellebrunn, was well attended on this sunny spring afternoon. Families with children, school classes, and tourists strolled through the spacious grounds, admiring the animals and enjoying the beautiful weather. Max and Lena had made their way straight to the new elephant enclosure, where they now stood in front of the large glass pane watching the majestic animals. A baby elephant romped in the sand, while its mother kept a watchful eye on it. Did you know that elephants are the only mammals that can't jump? Lena asked eagerly, without taking her eyes off the animals. I didn't know that, Max replied honestly. And they can hear with their feet, Lena continued. They sense vibrations through the ground. That's how they communicate over long distances. Fascinating. How do you know all this? From the books in our library, Lena explained proudly. I read a little bit about animals every day. Max looked at the little girl next to him with admiration. In the months he had known her, he had come to appreciate her intelligence, curiosity, and empathy. Lena had a natural gift for seeing the world with open eyes and finding beauty where others overlooked it. Len, he said quietly, can I ask you a question? Of course, she replied, without taking her eyes off the elephants. Do you remember our first encounter When you offered to teach me how to walk. Lena nodded. Of course I remember. You laughed, but not really. It was a sad laugh. Max was surprised by her powers of observation. You're right. It was a sad laugh, but you know what? I think you kept your promise. Now Lena turned to him, her eyes wide and questioning. Really? But you're still in a wheelchair. Yes, I am, Max confirmed. But you said that walking properly means going where my dreams are. And that's exactly what I did with your and Clara's help. Lena beamed with pride. Then I'm a good teacher. The best, Max assured her. You taught me that there's more than one way to go through life. Mom always says it's not important how fast you go, but where you're going. Your mother is a wise woman, Max said with a smile. Yes, she is. Lena looked at him thoughtfully. Do you like my mom? The directness of the question surprised Max. Of course I like your mother. She's a wonderful person. No, I mean, do you like her like in fairy tales? Max felt himself blushing, something that hadn't happened to him since his youth. That's a complicated question, Lena. Why? Either you like her or you don't. It's not complicated. Coming from a child's mouth, it sounded so simple. And maybe it was. Over the past few months, he had developed a deep admiration and affection for Kara. Her strength, her intelligence, her unwavering integrity, all of that had touched him. But he had carefully held back those feelings for fear of jeopardizing their working relationship or being misunderstood. I like your mother very much, he finally admitted. But our situation is special. We worked together. We built the foundation together. So what? Lena asked, unimpressed. Mom says the best relationships are the ones where you work together on something important. Max had to smile at the wisdom that came from the mouth of this 5-year-old. Did your mother say that? Not about you, Lena admitted, but she always smiles when she talks about working with you, and she looks prettier when she smiles. I agree with you, Max said quietly. Lena turned her attention back to the elephants. You know, elephants stay together their whole lives. They take care of each other, especially the babies and the old ones. They're like a family. A family? Max repeated thoughtfully. That's special. We could be a family too, Lena said casually as she watched the baby elephant playfully squirting water with its trunk. You, Mom, and me, we fit together well. Max stared at her, speechless at her blunt directness. Before he could answer, Lena tugged at his sleeve. Can we go see the tigers now? They're about to be fed. Of course, he said, grateful for the change of subject. As they walked through the zoo, Lena chatting cheerfully beside his wheelchair, his thoughts continued to dwell on her words. We could be a family too. She had said it so simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And maybe, Max thought as he watched Lena excitedly pointing at the tiger enclosure, maybe it was. When they returned to the palace in the early evening, Lena was exhausted but happy. She had led Max from one enclosure to the next all afternoon, asking questions, observing animals, and even taking part in a short guided tour for children, where she had impressed the zookeeper with her knowledge. There you are at last, Clara greeted them in the entrance hall. How was the zoo? Great, Lena exclaimed, and immediately began telling her about the elephants, tigers, penguins, and all the other animals they had seen. And Max bought me a stuffed baby elephant, she added, proudly pulling a gray stuffed animal out of her backpack. That's great, Clara said with a smile. Why don't you go freshen up? Dinner is almost ready, and you must be hungry after such an exciting day. Lena nodded and ran up the stairs to her apartment, clutching the baby elephant tightly. Thank you for taking her with you, Clara said to Max when Lena was out of earshot. She loves these outings with you. It gives me pleasure, Max replied honestly. She's a remarkable child. She is. Clara looked at him more closely. You look pensive. Is everything okay? Max hesitated. Lena's direct question about his feelings for Kara was still haunting him. Everything's fine, he said finally. Just a long but beautiful day. Would you like to stay for dinner? Nothing special, just pasta with vegetables. Gladly, Max accepted the invitation. In recent months, he had been having dinner with Clara and Lena more and more often, either in their small apartment in the palace or at his house by the lake when Dietrich drove them there. They went upstairs together to the cozy apartment where Clara and Lena lived. Unlike the temporary accommodations of the other families, This one was furnished for a longer stay. Clara, as co-director of the foundation, would be living here for the foreseeable future. While Clara finished preparing dinner, Max told her about the highlights of the zoo visit and Lena's impressive knowledge of the animals. She even surprised the zookeeper, he reported proudly. He said she knew more about elephants than some zoo students. I can imagine, Clara laughed. She devours every book about animals she can get her hands on. Have you ever thought about sending her to a school for gifted children? Max asked cautiously. With her intellect and curiosity, she might be better supported there. Clara put a pot on the stove before answering. Of course I've thought about it, but schools like that are expensive, and Lena is happy where she is. She has friends, good teachers, and so far she's doing well with the curriculum. If it's just a question of money, no. Kara interrupted him gently. It's not just about money, Max. It's also about what's best for Lena. She is socially and emotionally close to her classmates. Changing schools could tear her away from this important social network. Max nodded thoughtfully. You're right. Sorry for interfering. You didn't, Clara assured him. Your concern for Lena means a lot to me. Really. Their eyes met, and for a moment the kitchen around them seemed to disappear. Max felt that warm feeling in his chest again, the one he knew so well by now, a feeling that only appeared in Clara's presence. Mom, Max, I'm ready, Lena called as she burst into the kitchen, interrupting the moment. She had changed her clothes and braided her hair into two messy pigtails. She was still holding the baby elephant tightly in her hand. Perfect, said Clara, turning back to her husband. Dinner is almost ready. Lena, could you please set the table? Dinner took place in a cheerful atmosphere. Lena told more stories from the zoo. Clara reported on her successful meeting with the education committee, and Max shared the good news about Sophia's new job. When they had finished eating, Max helped with the dishes, while Lena went to her room to draw a picture of the elephants she had seen that day. Kara, Max began hesitantly as he dried a plate, I wanted to ask you something. Yes? She looked up from the pot she was scrubbing. The Foundation's Booster Club is hosting a charity ball at the Kunstler House next month. As co-director, our presence is expected. He cleared his throat. Would you accompany me? As my partner, I mean, not just as a colleague. Clara paused in her movements and looked at him in surprise. Max, are you asking me out on a date? I guess so, he admitted, suddenly nervous like a teenager. Unless you think it's inappropriate, then we can just go as colleagues, of course, or you could bring someone else if you want. Max, Clara interrupted his stammering with a gentle smile. I would love to go to this ball with you as your partner. Really? Max couldn't hide his relief and joy. Really? Clara dried her hands and turned to him. To be honest, I was wondering if you would ever ask. You were waiting for me to ask? Max asked, surprised. Clara blushed slightly. Maybe a little. Why didn't you ask yourself? Because, she hesitated, because our situation is complicated. You are technically my employer. The foundation is a project. I didn't want it to look like I was mixing personal and professional interests. Max understood her concerns all too well. They were the same thoughts that had prevented him from showing his growing feelings for her. Claire, he said seriously, for me, the foundation is no longer my project. It's ours. You've contributed as much as I have, if not more. And as far as the working relationship goes, you're co-director, not my employee. We're partners in every sense of the word. Still, people will talk, Clara pointed out. Let them talk, Max replied with a determination that surprised even himself. We know who we are and how we feel about each other. That's all that matters. Clara took a step closer. And how do you feel, Max? He held her gaze. I feel that you are the most remarkable woman I have ever met. Strong, intelligent, compassionate, and I've been thinking for months about what it would be like to be more than just colleagues. Me too, Clara confessed quietly. Max took her hand in his. So, a date, she confirmed with a smile that made his heart beat faster. Yay, Lena's voice suddenly rang out from the door. She stood there with a beaming face, her baby elephant in a half-finished picture in her hands. I knew it. I asked Max at the zoo today if he likes you, Mom, and he blushed like a tomato. Clara laughed in surprise. Lena, were you eavesdropping? Just a little, Lena admitted casually, but I had to know if my plan would work. Your plan, Max and Clara asked at the same time. Of course, I brought you two together, Lena explained with the matter-of-factness of a child who still thinks the world is simple and logical. You were both so sad, Mom, because she had to work so hard and didn't have time to dream. See Max, because he couldn't walk and thought no one would like him. Now you're both happy. My plan worked. Max and Clara looked at each other and burst out laughing. A liberating, hearty laugh at the blunt wisdom of a child who sometimes saw life more clearly than the adults around her. Then I thank you for your clever plan, Max said to Lena and opened his arms. Lena ran to him and hugged him tightly. Now we're a real family, she announced contentedly. Like the elephants at the zoo. Clara joined them and put her arm around Lena's shoulders. Like the elephants at the zoo, she repeated softly as she returned Max's gaze, a look full of hope, affection, and the promise of a future together. The ballroom of Munich's Künstlerhaus was aglow with festive splendor. Crystal chandeliers cast their warm light on the elegantly dressed guests, who were chatting in small groups. They sipped champagne and enjoyed the sounds of the string quartet playing in a corner. In the middle of the room stood a large screen showing photos and videos of the Pala and its residents. Children in the library, mothers and fathers taking computer classes, communal meals in the common room, gardening in the blooming courtyard. Max sat in his wheelchair at the edge of the hall, watching the scene with a mixture of pride and nervousness. Today's charity ball was not only an opportunity to raise funds for the foundation, but also the first public event at which he and Clara were officially appearing as a couple. He glanced at his watch. Clara should be arriving any minute. She had insisted on getting ready at home and coming to the ball separately so she could put Lena to bed before the babysitter took over. Max, it's good to see you. Max turned and saw Thomas Kirchhoff, a friend, entrepreneur, and generous supporter of the foundation, approaching. Thomas, thank you for coming, Max greeted him warmly. I wouldn't miss this evening for the world, Kirchhoff replied. What you have achieved in just 1 year is impressive. How many families have you supported so far? 21 families have lived directly in the palace, Max replied proudly. 9 of them have already moved out, found permanent bosses in their own apartments. And our external education program has reached over 100 more children. Kirchhoff whistled. Impressive, impressive. And it all started with a chance encounter, I hear. Max smiled at the memory. Yes, with a little girl who taught me an unusual wisdom. Speaking of which, Kirchhoff lowered his voice conspiratorially. I've heard that you and the co-director of the foundation are now more than just professionally connected. News travels fast, Max commented dryly. Always in our circles, Kirchhoff smiled. But I'm happy for you, Max. After your accident, you were, well, let's just say not the most pleasant person to be around. It's good to see you smiling again. Before Max could reply, a murmur rippled through the room. He turned toward the entrance and forgot to breathe for a moment. Clara stood there in a long emerald green evening gown that elegantly flattered her slender figure. Her hair was pinned up, with a few curls falling gently around her face. She wore the simple silver jewelry Max had given her for her birthday. Nothing ostentatious, but of exquisite quality. She looked stunning, and more importantly, she radiated a natural dignity and self-confidence that she had not possessed a year ago. Excuse me, Thomas, Max said absently, rolling toward Clara. When she saw him, a radiant smile lit up her face. She walked toward him and leaned down for a gentle kiss, unconcerned by the curious glances of the other guests. You look gorgeous, Max said as she straightened it up again. Thank you, Clara blushed slightly. You look very good too. I can't remember ever seeing you in a tuxedo. A rare occurrence, Max admitted. I usually avoid such events, and now you're the host, Clara remarked with a smile. Life sometimes takes unexpected turns. The best turns, Max replied, squeezing her hand. A waiter came by and offered them champagne. They each took a glass and began circulating through the room, greeting guests and thanking them for their support of the foundation. Clara moved through the crowd with remarkable ease. She conversed effortlessly with politicians, business people, and celebrities, explaining the foundation's work with passion and precision and answering questions with natural authority. Max watched her with admiration and a touch of pride. The shy cleaning lady he had met a year ago had grown into a confident, eloquent woman. After a while, the mayor of Munich stepped onto the small stage at the end of the hall and asked for everyone's attention. The murmur of conversation gradually died down. Ladies and gentlemen, he began with a warm smile, it is my pleasure to be here tonight to recognize the remarkable work of the New Paths Foundation. In just 1 year, this initiative, led by Maximilian Brand and Clara Fisher, has achieved extraordinary things. He went on to praise the foundation's successes, the reintegration of families into the labor market, the educational achievements of the children, and the innovative combination of temporary accommodation, education, and vocational support. That is why I am delighted to announce today that the city of Munich has decided to support the Neue Wege Foundation with an annual grant of $500,000, starting with the next fiscal year. Applause broke out and Max shook Clara's hand, who opened her eyes wide in surprise. They had hoped for support, but not on this scale. In addition, the mayor continued, when the applause had died down, the city council had provided a plot of land in the Schwabing district where a second center modeled on Palmangelis could be built. This time the applause was even louder. Max and Clara exchanged incredulous glances. And now, the mayor concluded, I would like to invite the two people who launched this remarkable initiative to the stage, Maximilian Brand and Clara Fisher. Amid sustained applause, Max rolled onto the stage with Clara at his side. The mayor presented them with a symbolic plaque and posed with them for the photographers. When the applause finally died down, Clara stepped up to the microphone. She took a deep breath, visibly moved by the overwhelming support. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for this generous support and recognition, she began in a firm voice. When we started this project a year ago, we had a simple vision, not only to provide people in difficult life situations with a roof over their heads, but to help them reach their full potential. She spoke about the foundation's successes, the challenges and learning processes, and above all, the people whose lives had changed. But none of this would have been possible without the vision and courage of one man who decided that personal suffering could be transformed into collective gain. She turned to Max. Maximilian Brand had invested not only his fortune in this project, but also his heart. Max was moved by her words and the obvious emotion in her voice. He had never sought public recognition for the foundation. In fact, he had initially insisted that his name not be prominently mentioned. But hearing Clara's sincere appreciation meant more to him than any applause from the audience. Clara continued, thanking the many supporters, volunteers, and, last but not least, the families themselves whose determination and courage had made the program a success. Finally, she concluded with a warm smile, I would like to thank a very special person without whom none of this would exist. My daughter Lena, who with the uninhibited wisdom of a child, challenged a bitter man to dream and love again. Max felt tears welling up in his eyes, something he hadn't experienced in years. He took Clara's hand and squeezed it tightly, unable to speak. Capable. The mayor took the microphone again and invited the guests to enjoy the evening and donate generously to the expansion of the foundation. The orchestra began to play, and the guests returned to their conversations, now filled with new enthusiasm for the work of the foundation. Clara and Max were immediately surrounded by well-wishers, politicians offering cooperation, business people promising internships for the residents of the palace, other foundations expressing interest in collaboration. Amidst the hustle and bustle, Max felt his cell phone vibrate in his pocket. He excused himself briefly and rolled to a quieter corner of the hall to check it. It was a message from Lena, written from Klaas's cell phone. Did you win yet? Mama must look like a princess. I can't sleep. Can I see a photo? Love, Lena, and Elephant. Max smiled and waved Kara over. He showed her the message, and she laughed softly. She should have been asleep long ago. Obviously too excited, Max commented. Let's take a selfie. He held up his cell phone and Clara leaned down toward him, pressing her cheek against his. They both smiled at the camera, a picture of happiness and success. Perfect, Max said as he looked at the photo. He sent it to Kara, who forwarded it to Lena with a loving message. You know she'll be even more excited now, Max remarked amusedly. I know, but she wouldn't have let us sleep anyway until she knew how it went. Clara sat down on a chair next to Max. Can you believe what just happened? A second center, annual funding from the city. It's overwhelming, Max admitted, but also well-deserved. You've done an incredible job, Clara. Both of us, she corrected. It was always a joint project. Yes, but without your practical experience, your insights, your tireless dedication, it would have remained just a nice idea, not a functioning reality. Clara smiled and squeezed his hand. I think we complement each other well. You have the vision and the resources. I have the practical experience. A perfect team, Max agreed. He hesitated for a moment, then added, not just professionally. Clara blushed slightly. Her eyes sparkled in the dim light of the ballroom. No, not just professionally. Max was about to say something when they were interrupted by an elegant, elderly lady who approached them with a determined stride. Mr. Brand, Miss Fisher, she greeted them with a warm smile. I am Helger von Mansfeld, chairwoman of the Mansfeld Foundation. Max knew the name. The Mansfeld Foundation was one of Germany's largest and most respected charities, with an annual budget of several million euros. Ms. von Mansfeld, it's an honor, Kara said, standing up to shake the lady's hand. The honor is all mine, Ms. von Mansfeld replied. I have been following your work with great interest for several months. Your approach is innovative and, more importantly, effective. Thank you very much, said Max. We try to find sustainable solutions, not just treat symptoms. That's exactly what impressed me, nodded Mrs. von Mansfeld. And that's why I'm here to make you an offer. Max and Clara exchanged curious glances. The Mansfeld Foundation would like to spread your model throughout Germany, the lady explained without further ado. We are offering $2 million in funding over the next 3 years to implement your concept in at least 10 other cities. Clara gasped softly. $2 million with the option to increase to $10 million if the first projects are successful, added Ms. von Mansfeld with a satisfied smile. We believe in what you are doing, and we have the resources to implement it on a national scale. Max was speechless. What had started as a personal project, a way to give his own life meaning again, could now become a nationwide program that would help thousands of families. That's an extremely generous offer, he finally said. But it would mean we would have to significantly expand our commitment. Exactly, confirmed Ms. von Mansfeld. We would expect one or both of them to take on the national coordination. It would be a full-time position, well paid, of course. We'll have to think about it, Clara said cautiously. It's a big decision. Of course, the older lady nodded understandingly. I don't expect an immediate answer, but I wanted to present the opportunity to you in person. She handed them an elegant business card. Call me when you're ready to talk about it. After a few more polite words, Ms. von Mansfeld took her leave, leaving Max and Clara alone, both overwhelmed by the magnitude of the offer. 10 million euros, Clara whispered incredulously. That would mean we could help thousands of families. It would also mean that we would have to completely change our lives, Max pointed out. Travel, meetings, managing a much larger team. Clara nodded thoughtfully. It's a huge opportunity, but also a big responsibility. We don't have to decide right away, Max said, taking her hand. Let's enjoy tonight and talk about it later. Clara smiled and squeezed his hand. You're right. Tonight we celebrate. The rest of the evening flew by. They danced. Clara guided Max's wheelchair across the dance floor in an elegant, slow choreography they had secretly practiced, talked to guests, accepted congratulations, and enjoyed the festive atmosphere. When the event ended around midnight, they were both exhausted but happy. The evening's donations had exceeded all expectations, and the recognition from the city and the Mansfeld Foundation opened doors they had never dared to dream of. Dietrich was waiting with the car in front of the artist's house. Home, Mr. Brand? He asked as he helped Max into the car. Max looked at Clara, who was just getting in. Yes, but first we'll take Clara home. She has to check on Lena. The drive to the palace was spent in comfortable silence. Clara leaned her head on Max's shoulder, and he held her hand, both too tired to speak but filled with the impressions of the evening. When they arrived at the palace, Kara said, Are you coming up with me? Just for a moment, to see Lena. She would be happy to see you. Of course, Max replied without hesitation. They found Lena fast asleep in her bed, clutching her baby elephant tightly. The nanny, a student from the Foundation's neighborhood program, reported that Lena had stayed up until almost 11 p.m., hoping to get more photos from the ball. After saying goodbye to the nanny, Max and Clara stood in Lena's room and looked at the sleeping child. "It's amazing," Max whispered. "It all started with her simple, childlike wisdom." "Yes," Clara agreed, gently stroking Lena's hair. "She saved us both in her own way." They quietly left the room and went to the living room, where Clara took off her high-heeled shoes and sighed with relief. "An incredible evening," she said, sinking onto the sofa. "The beginning of something even bigger," added Max, rolling over next to her. "The offer from the Mannersfeld Foundation. It could change everything." Clara nodded thoughtfully. "It's a unique opportunity, but I wonder if we're ready for this step. What do you think? It would mean that we would no longer just work here in Munich, but all over Germany, traveling, conferences, building new teams." She hesitated. "And for Lena, it would mean that I would have less time for her, or that she would often have to come with us, which could affect her schooling and her friendships." Max understood her concerns. He had thought about how national expansion would affect their personal relationship. "It wouldn't have to be one of us," he said after a while. "We could hire someone else to coordinate nationally, someone who already has experience with the foundation." "Sophia," Clara suggested. "She has developed excellently and knows the program from her own experience." "An excellent idea," Max agreed. "We could stay here in Munich, run the original center, and set the strategic direction, while Sophia and a team take care of the national expansion." "That could work," Clara said, visibly relieved. "It would allow us to seize the opportunity without completely turning our lives upside down." "Our lives," Max repeated softly and took her hand. "Sounds nice when you say it." Clara smiled and leaned toward him to kiss him gently. It felt nice, too. They were silent for a moment, enjoying the quiet and the closeness. Then Max said hesitantly, "Kara, I've been thinking a lot lately about us, about the future." "Me too," she confessed. "I know it's still early," Max continued. "We've only known each other for a year. We've only been a couple for a few months. But," he took a deep breath, "I've never felt for anyone the way I feel for you. You and Lena have become my family, the most important thing to me." Clara looked at him with wide eyes, her face soft in the dim light of the living room lamp. "Max, what are you trying to say?" "What I'm trying to say," he squeezed her hand tighter, "is that I can't imagine a life without you. That I want us to become a real family, not sometime in the distant future, but soon." "Are you proposing to me?" Clara asked with a trembling smile. "Not yet," Max replied. "I'm saving the real proposal for a special moment, with a ring and everything that goes with it. But I wanted to know if you could imagine saying yes someday." Clara leaned forward and kissed him, this time longer and deeper. When she pulled away, she whispered, "I could imagine saying yes now, but I'll wait patiently for your official proposal." Max laughed softly, his heart filled with a joy he never thought possible. "I promise it will be spectacular." "It doesn't have to be," Clara assured him. "It just has to come from you." They talked for a while longer, making plans for the future, discussing the Mansfeld Foundation's offer and how they could best transfer their model to other cities. Finally, Max said reluctantly, "I should go. It's late and you need sleep." "Or you could stay," Clara suggested quietly. "We have a guest room." Max paused. It would be the first time he had stayed overnight. Another step in their relationship, another sign of their growing bond. "I'd love to stay," he said softly. Later, as they lay side by side in bed, Kara already asleep at his side, Max thought about the incredible journey that had begun a year ago. From a bitter, isolated man in a gilded cage to a man with purpose, love, and family in his life. He thought of Lena's words when they first met. "To walk right is to go where your dreams are, not where your feet carry you." She had been right. He had learned to walk not with his legs, but with his heart. And his path had led him exactly where he was meant to be, to Kara and Lena, to a life full of meaning and love. With this thought, he fell asleep, more peaceful and happy than ever before in his life. A year later, the lives of Max, Kara, and Lena had changed fundamentally. The Neue Wege Foundation had become a national model, with 6 centers in various German cities and more in the planning stages. Sophia had proven herself to be an excellent national coordinator, leading a team of dedicated employees, many of whom were former residents of the foundation's houses. The original Palais Mangela in Munich remained the heart of the organization, and Max and Clara continued to run it together while setting the strategic direction for the entire foundation. But that wasn't the only change in their lives. On a warm summer day, Max sat on the terrace of his villa on Lake Starnberg. No longer his lonely prison, it was now a lively home for his new family. Clara and he had married 6 months earlier in a small, intimate ceremony in the courtyard of the palace, surrounded by their closest friends and family. Lena, now 7 years old and the proud bearer of the surname Brand Fisher, was playing in the garden with the new member of the family, a golden Labrador named Einstein, which Max had given her for her birthday. "Watch out, Einstein," Lena shouted with a laugh as the dog chased a ball she had thrown. "You're too fast for me." Max smiled at the sight. Lena had blossomed over the past 2 years. The little girl who used to search behind restaurants for leftover food had grown into a confident, intelligent, and compassionate young person. She now attended a school for gifted children, had found friends who shared her intelligence and creativity, and dreamed of one day becoming a veterinarian or environmentalist. The patio door opened and Kara stepped out, carrying a tray of lemonade and pastries. She looked beautiful in her simple summer dress, her hair slightly tousled by the wind. "The guests should be here soon," she said as she set the tray on the table. "Is everything ready for the party?" "Everything is perfectly prepared," Max assured her, gently pulling her down for a kiss. "And you look stunning." Clara smiled and sat down next to him. "I can hardly believe it's been 2 years since we met. It feels like it was yesterday." "The best chance encounter of my life," Max agreed, taking her hand. "Although I now believe it was not chance, but fate," Clara teased him gently. She knew that Max, once a rational businessman, was now more open to such thoughts. "Perhaps," he admitted, "or divine intervention, or simply a little girl's unerring sense for people who need each other." They both looked at Lena, who was now lying in the grass, Einstein by her side, reading intently from a book given to her by Dr. Martinez, the zoo veterinarian who had become her mentor. "Have you finished the speech?" Clara asked quietly. Max nodded. "Yes, although I'm not sure I'll get through it without tears." "That doesn't matter," Clara reassured him. "It just shows how much it means to you. Today was a special day. It was the second anniversary of the founding of the New Paths Foundation, and at the same time, the official inauguration of the Sixth Center in Hamburg. They would be connected via video conference while Sophia cut the ribbon. But first, they would celebrate here at the house by the lake with their closest friends and supporters. A car pulled up, followed by a second and a third. The first guests had arrived. "Len," Clara called, "they're here. Come and help us. Welcome them." Lena jumped up and Einstein followed her, wagging his tail, as she ran to the terrace. "Is Mrs. Sophia here yet?" she asked excitedly. "She should be arriving any minute," Max replied. "She wanted to take the earliest flight from Hamburg." Lena beamed. She had developed a special bond with Sophia, who had become a kind of big sister to her. Both shared the experience of having once been on the margins of society, and both had found a new life through the foundation. The next hour flew by as more and more guests arrived. Thomas Kirchhoff and his wife, Mrs. von Mansfeld, with her assistant, the mayor of Munich and several city councilors, Dr. Martinez from the zoo, Mr. Wagner, the architect who had now designed all 6 foundation centers, Robert, Max's loyal assistant, who was now an important member of the foundation team, and many others who had contributed in one way or another to the foundation's success story. It was particularly touching to see some of the graduates again. Families who had gotten back on their feet thanks to the foundation and were now living their lives independently and successfully. Their children played with Lena in the garden while the adults chatted on the terrace, celebrating successes and exchanging new ideas. When Sophia finally arrived, straight from the airport, she was greeted with applause. The young woman, once a desperate single mother with no prospects, beamed with confidence and joy. Her son Marco, now a bright 9-year-old, immediately ran to Lena and the other children. Sophia Clara hugged her warmly. "How did the dress rehearsal in Hamburg go?" "Everything was perfect," Sophia reported proudly. "The building has turned out beautifully. All the systems are working and the first families can move in next week. We already have over 30 applications." "Excellent," Max praised her. "Your work is remarkable. Without you, we could never have managed this national expansion." Sophia blushed slightly at the praise. "It's a privilege to be part of something so meaningful. You gave me a chance when I needed it most. Now I can do the same for others." Max nodded thoughtfully. It was exactly this chain reaction of kindness and opportunity that he had hoped for when he founded the foundation. People who had received help passed it on, creating a network of support and empowerment that went far beyond the original vision. When all the guests had arrived, Clara tapped her spoon on her glass to get everyone's attention. The conversations gradually died down. "Dear friends," she began in a warm voice, "welcome to the 2-year anniversary of the New Paths Foundation. It is our pleasure to share this special day with all of you, those who have been with us from the beginning and those who have joined us along the way." She spoke about the successes of the past 2 years, about the hundreds of families who had been supported by the foundation, about the educational achievements of the children, about the professional reintegration of the parents, about the innovative programs that had been developed, and about the growing national recognition. But today we don't just want to look back, we also want to look ahead. And I give the floor to the man who started this journey, my husband, Maximilian Brand. The guests applauded as Max rolled up to Kara and took the microphone. He took a deep breath, overwhelmed by the significance of the moment. He began 2 years ago. I was a different man, a bitter, isolated man who had lost faith in life and humanity after an accident. He paused, searching the crowd for Lena, who looked at him with wide eyes. Then I met a little girl who made me an unusual offer. "Give me your leftovers and I'll teach you how to walk." A smile and giggle rippled through the crowd. Lena beamed with pride. "I laughed at the time," Max continued. "How could a little girl teach a man in a wheelchair to walk?" But she didn't mean it literally. What Lena wanted to teach me was much more important. She wanted to teach me to dream again, to hope, to love. And she did that with the help of her remarkable mother, who has since become my wife. He reached for Clara's hand and squeezed it tightly. Together, we have built something bigger than ourselves. An organization that not only provides shelter, but dignity, education, opportunity, and hope. A community that proves that every person, regardless of their circumstances, has the potential to achieve great things if only they are given the right support. The guests listened attentively, many visibly moved by his words. "And today," Maxford continued, "I would like to make a special announcement, one that is very close to my heart." He paused, exchanged a glance with Clara, who nodded encouragingly. "Clara and I have decided to expand the foundation with a new branch, the Lena Brand Fisher Scholarship for Medical Innovation." A surprised murmur rippled through the crowd. Lena looked back and forth between Max and her mother with wide eyes. "This scholarship will provide $2 million annually for research and development of advanced mobility aids. Exoskeletons, neural interfaces, stem cell therapy, and other technologies that can help people with limited mobility. It will support both established researchers and emerging talent, with a special focus on affordable solutions for all social classes." Clara stepped forward and took the microphone. In addition, this scholarship will fund a special program for children with disabilities, a summer camp where they will not only receive medical support, but also discover and develop their dreams and talents, a place where they can learn that their disability does not define them, but is only part of their unique story. Max added, "This scholarship is named after Lena because she was the one who taught me that true mobility does not depend on functioning legs, but on an open heart and a determined spirit. She showed me that there is more than one way to go through life and that the most important way is the one that leads to our dreams." Lena stood frozen, her mouth slightly open in amazement. Then she suddenly ran to Max and threw herself into his arms, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered, the first time she had ever called him that. Max held her tight, too moved to speak. Clara joined them and embraced them both, and for a moment, they were just a family bound together by love. The guests applauded spontaneously, many with tears in their eyes at this emotional scene. When Lena finally broke free, she said with a seriousness astonishing for her age, "I promise I will work hard to honor this scholarship. One day I will be a doctor myself and help people who need it." I'm sure of it, Max said gently, stroking her hair. Clara took the microphone again to continue the formal part of the event. And now it's time for the live broadcast to Hamburg for the official opening of our sixth center. A large screen was activated, and the image of the newly renovated building in Hamburg appeared, in front of which a small crowd had gathered. Sophia's deputy waved to the camera and greeted the audience in Munich. As the ceremony in Hamburg began, Max gently pulled Lena aside. "Are you surprised?" he asked quietly. "Very," she admitted. "I didn't know you could name a scholarship after me. I'm just a kid." "A child who changed my life," Max replied seriously. "And through this scholarship, you will change the lives of many other people, especially children like you, who have big dreams." Lena thought for a moment, her face unusually pensive. "You know, 2 years ago when I told you I could teach you to walk, I actually meant it quite literally." Max raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Really?" She nodded. "Yes, I had learned at school that there are special robotic legs that can help people like you, but I didn't know what they were called or how expensive they were. I really thought I could teach you how to use them." Max laughed softly. "That's amazing. You were wise even back then when you knew yourself. And now you're going to help develop legs like that for other people," Lena said enthusiastically. "That's even better than my original plan." "Much better," Max agreed. "And you know what? I've already talked to some researchers. There are promising new developments. Maybe, just maybe, one day I'll actually be able to walk again. Not in the old way, but in a new way." Lena's eyes widened. "Really? That would be wonderful. It would be wonderful," Max confirmed. "But even if it doesn't work out, I'm happy with my life as it is. Because thanks to you and your mother, I've learned that there are many ways to walk, live, and love." Clara joined them with a glass of champagne in her hand. "What are you two talking about so intensely?" "Walking," Lena replied with a meaningful smile. "Ah, the old topic," Clara teased gently and sat down next to them. Max took her hand. "Clara, I have to confess something to you, something I've kept to myself all these years." Clara looked at him questioningly. "What is it?" Max took a deep breath. "After the accident, the doctors told me that with intensive therapy and the right aids, I might be able to partially regain my mobility. Not completely, but enough to walk short distances with support. I refused to try, out of bitterness, out of defiance, out of fear of failure." Clara squeezed his hand. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I'm ready to try," Max said firmly. "I have an appointment with a specialist next week. It will be a long, hard road, and maybe it will lead to nothing. But I'm willing to walk it for the two of you." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Max, no matter what the outcome, we're with you, every step of the way." "Every step," Lena affirmed, placing her small hand on their clasped hands. At that moment, Max was overcome by an overwhelming wave of gratitude. Here he was, surrounded by people who loved him, part of a family he never thought he would have, involved in work that helped thousands of people, all because of a chance encounter with a little girl searching for food in a garbage can. Life was full of unexpected twists and turns, he thought. Sometimes the darkest paths led to the brightest destinations. His accident, which had once seemed like the end of all hope, had ultimately led him to his true calling. Not as a successful businessman, but as someone who used his privilege to help others realize their own dreams. On the screen, the ribbon was being cut in front of the new foundation building in Hamburg, and applause broke out both there and here in Munich. Max raised his glass for a toast, and all the guests followed suit. "To new paths," he said in a firm voice, "and to all those who are brave enough to walk them." "To new paths," the guests replied. When the formal part of the celebration was over and the guests divided into smaller groups for conversation, Max, Kara, and Lena retreated for a moment to the quiet side of the terrace overlooking the sparkling lake. "2 years ago," Clara said quietly, "I never would have dreamed of standing here. A safe home, fulfilling work, a loving family. It seemed impossible." "For me too," Max admitted. "I had resigned myself to spending the rest of my life alone and bitter, and all I wanted was for someone to give me something to eat," Lena added pragmatically, making the adults laugh. "You got so much more," Clara said, hugging her daughter. "We all got more," Max corrected. He gazed across the lake, where the sun was slowly setting, bathing the sky in a spectacular display of gold, pink, and purple. Much, much more. Lena watched the sunset with shining eyes. The world is so beautiful, she said thoughtfully, and there are so many people we can still help. You're right, Max agreed, and we've only just begun. As they stood there, the three Brandfishers, united in love and a shared vision. Max knew with absolute certainty that he had finally learned to walk. Not in the way he had once believed to be the only true way, but in a deeper, more meaningful way. He had learned to walk the path to his dreams, and it was the most beautiful path he had ever walked. Fimder Historier, dear listeners, we hope you were touched by the story of Maximilian, Cara, and little Lena. This journey shows us how true mobility depends not on our legs, but on our hearts. For more inspiring stories that explore the complexity of life and remind us that hope can be found in the most unexpected places, please subscribe to our channel and leave a like under this video. Every day, we bring you unique stories that will make you think, feel, and dream. Don't miss our upcoming content. We look forward to seeing you again for our next story.